Hello friends, welcome back to part 3. So in part 1 we have seen uh, what is object store, why we need object store, how we can use object store. And part 2 we have seen that if we need to use basically a custom setting, uh, what are the custom setting and how we can use custom setting, and if we are using a custom setting, how exactly they play a role. So this is you have seen in part 2. In part 3 we have object store v2. Okay, so let me explain why object store v2 come into the picture as per my understanding. So basically, as you know that we have a different deployment strategies. What are those? So we are deploying our application in CloudHub. We are deploying our application in on-premises. We are deploying our application in basically RTF. So let's take example of CloudHub. So when we deploy our application in CloudHub, what will happen? So basically, there machine is allocated, or basically a MuleSoft server EC2 instance machine is allocated for your application. When you deploy multiple applications, so multiple servers are allocated. When you deploy 3 applications, 3 servers are there. So what does it mean? It means that every application having their own machine, having their own JVM. One application and other application will not share memory or JVM between them. So there is no memory synchronization have like in cluster mode. So basically there is when we create a cluster, and so in the cluster there we are adding a node. So if we deploy application one in cluster, so it will basically deploy in both node, and the application share the data using a cluster grid memory. But in the case of CloudHub, every application having their own JVM, their own memory. One application cannot access other data. So, and when every time we are going to deploy application, the new server is allocated. For example, when we deploy first time, new server is allocated. When we deploy again, next time the same application, old server shut down and new server is allocated to the application. Okay, so basically, because of this concept, if we are using MuleSoft object store for the application, then we are running our application in a CloudHub. Okay, and we have data in object store, which is a kind of important data. We are doing save operation, we are doing retrieve operation, we have saved a token, we have shared many information which we don't want to lose when deployment is happening. So if we are not using object store v2, if we are using MuleSoft object store, where it is basically utilized persisting machine file system, when it is utilizing machine file system MuleSoft object store, when deployment is happening, new server is allocated, so our data is lost. Okay, but that we don't want to lose in case of CloudHub, because in CloudHub the new machine is allocated. So that's why a concept come for basically object store v2 services. So basically, what is that? When new deployment is happening, so the object store v2 is not deploy. Basically, object store v2 not saved data in the worker. It is saved data somewhere else. Okay, so when one deployment happening or multiple deployment happening, data is not going to be lost in case of CloudHub deployment. So that's why we have an option. We can choose this option, enable object store v2 service in case of Mule 4 application. Okay, Mule 3 application can use object store v1 and v2, but Mule 4 application can only use v2. So it's basically a service which can store a data. Our worker can access the data, and if we deploy our application on a multiple worker, so multiple worker can access the same data. For example, one application deploy with 2 worker, application 1 saving a data. If application 2 is required to get the data, they will get the data. So that's how basically it will work in multiple worker in object store v2 service. We will have a demo in part 4 where I will show you that how exactly object store v2 is going to work in multiple workers. Okay, so it's basically a CloudHub application, store data, access Mule runtime application within multiple workers, can be accessed via MuleSoft object store or can be accessed via REST API. We will have separate session for REST API as well. Okay, and on-premises Mule application also access this CloudHub v2 data via basically a REST API, object store REST API. Okay, so let me explain. Basically, as in MuleSoft object store, where we deploy our application in local or on premises, we have seen the basically a custom setting. In custom setting, we have seen what is the anti-TTL, what is the expiration interval, what is the max record. So those settings here we can also configure. Okay, and some of the setting are coming as a default. So here I'm not going to talk about the custom setting. I'm going to talk about here's a default setting. Okay, when we are not defining anti-TTL, what will happen? Okay, we created our application. Okay, let me show you. So we created our application, no configuration application. In no configuration application, we basically not use uh, object store reference configuration. And when we have not used object store reference configuration, if we deploy this application in local, so using MuleSoft object store, and when the same application we are going to deploy in CloudHub, and we have click option OSV2. Let me show you. When we click option OSV2, for example, deploy application, and there is an option come. Let me show you CloudHub OSB2. When we are deploying our application in CloudHub, we are going to select option OSB2. So basically, and we have not defined any custom setting. Basically, we have used the default setting. So what will happen? So that's how I'm going to explain. So basically, when you're deploying your application in 4.21 and later MuleSoft runtime. Okay, 4.2.1 and later 4.2.2, 4.3.0, 4.4.0, 4.3.0 and 4.4.0. That is, so basically, if anti-TTL value is absent, it is 0 or negative. So when it is 0 or not defined or negative, then we consider as a absent anti-TTL value. So the rolling TTL is going to be applied. So guys, let's take focus here. So we are deploying our application on CloudHub. There is no object store reference we have given that. So there's basically rolling and static TTL is going to be defined. Okay, so what is rolling TTL and what is static TTL? I'm going to explain. If you are going to deploy your application on 4.2.1 and later, then rolling TTL is applied. What does it mean? When first time you are going to save your key, the anti-TTL value is 30 days. Okay, when you are going to deploy your application on CloudHub, when the first time you will save the key, you will perform the save operation, which will basically store a key value pair. So the rolling TTL is applied, and that is a 30 days. Okay, and when you access your application, you can continually access your application, but it will impact when you access your application from last 7 days of 30 days, like 23, 24, 25, 26, last 7 days of 30 days. So let me show you that the last 7 days of 30 days. Then your window will be extended for another 30 days. Okay, if you not access your basically if you not access your key from last 7 days or 30 days, then your entity will expire, it will delete the key. Okay, but when it will not delete the key, when it will increase the window to 30 days, when the last 7 days of 30 days, you will going to access your key using some operations. Let me show you. Retrieve all keys and store operation can only extend TTL to another 30 days of last 7 days of 30 days. If you firing a request contain, clear and remove, your TTL is not going to be extended. So that is a rolling TTL. Rolling TTL value, minimum value is 30 days and maximum value unlimited if you can access the data last 7 days of 30 days. That is called rolling TTL. When rolling TTL is applied, when you're deploying your application in 4.2.1 and later MuleSoft runtime. So basically rolling TTL is going to be applied. And when the static TTL is applied, when you're deploying your application earlier than 4.2.1, then static TTL is applied. What does it mean? It means that when you save your key, it will fix for 30 days. Okay, and it will remove after 30 days. Okay, so that is what the basically static TTL is applied. So when it is removed, you have to save again. Okay, it is not dynamically extended the window. So custom config TTL is static minimum 1 second and maximum static value is 30 days and minimum 1 second, maximum 30 days. If you choose value less than 1 second and greater than 30 days, means for example, if you choose anti-TTL value is less than 1 second or greater than 30 seconds, so by default 30 days is applied. So we can see that so in rolling TTL and static TTL, there is a time boundary, basically a time boundary for 30 days. it depends on that how you're going to access your key, but it is a time boundary. Time boundary is 30 days. In case of rolling TTL, it's extended when you access your key from last 7 days of 30 days, but in case of STTL, it is a 30 days time boundary. So that is how I explain in object store v2 how NDTTL is going to be work. Okay, so let me explain what other feature we are getting in object store v2. So a limited number of entries, there is no basically a limit on entry. Okay, and in object store v2, when you define a basically max entry, it will not configure, you will not able to configure a max entry. If you define max entry 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever value you define, in case of object store v2, if you are using object store v2, it will be ignored. We can store a value up to 10 MBs, and basically it's available in all supported regions. For example, your application deployed to one specific region, and so the same region object store v2 service is also available. When your application deployed in any region, the same region your data is also going to be stored. Okay, and that region your worker is persistent. Basically, an OSB will look at it in the same region of your worker, and persistent means data will not be lost after you restart the server. And it will basically when you are using CloudHub connect with MuleSoft object store connector, when you store operation, so it is end-to-end TLS secured, and it is using encrypting FIPS 140-2 standard compliance. Basically, the key is encrypted with this algorithm. Okay, it is not plain text saved. How we can see data? We can see the data. We can see that how many keys are stored, but we cannot see the actual data of the value. It is a binary form. It is basically a form of this one. We cannot able to human cannot able to basically decrypt that. Okay, it can only be decrypted by a retrieve operation, retrieve and retrieve all operation. And basically when object store v2, we are deploying application with object store v2, and it is using object store v2, so it is using default persistent object store. I will show you multi-worker. Multi-worker CloudHub application can share data, and value for this plays binary key. Okay, so when we are using object store, so by default the base subscription is come. In the base subscription, there is a rate limiting is applied. Okay, and you are deploying your application in CloudHub, so you can only access 10 requests, 10 transactions per second, and when you send 11th request, you will get 429. But in case of premium subscription, it is 100 transactions per second. Okay, and if you need a more detail about the billing part and basically a rate limiting part, please check this link, so you will get more idea about. By default, everyone get base subscription if they have basically many calls, more than 10 transactions per second, so they can go for the premium subscriptions. Okay, and this is a basically 100 million transactions per month we are getting. In case of base subscription, there is some limit. In case of premium subscription, there is a limit, like I think 26 million per transaction per month for base subscription, and 100 million transactions per month for premium subscription. Okay, so let me show you no configuration. So when we are deploying our application with no configuration in CloudHub, so let me deploy one application. So I have no configuration. Okay, so I have this application. This is my application name. Upload a file. I'm going to basically upload. So no configuration. I'm going to deploy to 4.3, and OSB2 is enabled. So let's wait for deployment. Yeah, so my application is deployed. Let me show you about application. So it's the same application with the no object store custom setting. And when I deploy my application, so as you can see, there's one scheduler running. Let me show you scheduler running in every 1 second. So it's checking every second. It is checking how many keys are saved. So as you can see that here we have a 0 key. So let me store some key. So I'm going to go to dashboard. Let me copy URL, copy address link, and let me store some basically key information. So I'm going to store some key here. Store key 1. Store key 2. Store key 3. So I've stored 3 keys inside the object store. Let me show you data. Okay, uh, logs. So as you can see that we have a key 1, key 2, key 3 stored, and those are basically we are getting that. So basically my application deployed on 4.3.0, rolling TTL is applied. Currently all key having rolling TTL 30 days. If I will access the retrieve all operation, retrieve and retrieve all operation, retrieve all key, retrieve all, and retrieve operation and stored operation, then my rolling TTL, basically the window will be extended to 30 days. Okay, but in case of static TTL, it is not extended. Okay, so the main scene here is to show you when we are using object store v2, so we can see the data in basically in object store v2. It is using a default persistence, and the main important thing is that the partition is created as a default partition. What does it mean? It means that we have not defined any configuration. We are using a object store reference as basically a default configuration. So the default partition is created, and inside default partition, as you can see that the key 1, key 2 and key 3 which we have stored it, so those keys are visible. Okay, so this is basically about object stored v2 with no configuration. So let me just read that. Data created in default partition, I already show. Access in runtime manager, object stored, we can go to object store and we can basically check the data, how many keys are stored. TTL is 0, key is not expired. Max entry ignored. If you define max entry or not define max entry, the max entry is ignored. There is no limit for number of keys. No TTL boundaries, absent TTL. So basically static and rolling TTL applied based on your runtime version. Okay, expiration interval, object store v2 ignored, anti TTL. Okay, so this is about no configuration. So let me show you a custom configuration. So I am going to deploy one more application in it. Okay, so let me show you another application which I have a custom setting. So let me open that, let me close that, and let me open this. So what kind of custom setting we have? Okay, so custom setting we have, so max entry I'm going to deploy max entry I'm going to deploy 2, and entry TTL is 0. Basically I'm just ignoring the entry TTL. So when I save the key, the window is 30 days only, and expiration interval thread I'm running for every 5 seconds. So why this custom configuration I'm going to show you? Because I just want to show you that if we define a max entry, if we are using object store v2 service, so our max entry is going to be ignored. Okay, so let me just extract the jar file of this custom configuration. Project, export, next. Okay, meanwhile it is done. Let me check successfully done or not. Yes, exported jar file. Let me show you. This is, we have exported. Okay, so let me deploy application, another application. It's same application, but we have defined the custom configuration. CloudHub, upload a file, custom setting, runtime version 4.3, and deploy. Yes, so my application is deployed. Let me just save some keys in it. So copy address link, store. I'm going to store key 1, key 2, key 3, key 4. Okay, so guys, I have stored 4 number of key value pair, and let me show you custom configuration. So custom configuration, as I mentioned, that max entry is 2. Okay, entry TTL defines 0. So basically the rolling TTL is going to be applied for 30 days and expiration interval 5. So here I just want to show you that our CloudHub object store, when we deploy our application in CloudHub, if it is using object store v2 service, then it will simply ignoring our max entries. So let me show you. Box. Yep. So as you can see that key 1, key 2, key 3 will be coming. I will wait for basically some few second, 10 second or 15 second to show you that the max entry is ignored. Okay. So in case of CloudHub v2, if you're using CloudHub v2 in our CloudHub application, so max entry is ignored. Okay. So there is no, we can say that size boundary of keys, of key value pair. Basically there's no size bound. Basically size boundary means number of keys. Number of keys is no boundary for object store v2 service. Okay, so let me make some configuration. So as this is a custom configuration, so let me show you when we are enable a custom setting, and when we enable a custom setting, so how we can see our object store data. So it will create in our basically all object store v2 data will be created in default persistent object store. But when you define a custom setting, so the default partition is not going to be created, or we can see that your key will not store in the default partition. Another partition is going to be created, and that is your basically reference name of your object store. So as you can see that we have stored 4 keys, and those keys are not in default partition, it is in your custom partition, because we have defined this object store v1. We have defined this object store configuration. So let me define static basically, let me define entity.tl. I am going to define entity.tl is 30 second. Okay, so let me keep this setting as it is, because there is no significance. Either we define or define, there is no use. So let consider as it is. Okay, so entity.tl 30 second and expire interval 5 second. So let me save this configuration, right click, and I'm going to be export application, export jar file, and finish. Yes, as you can see that exported. Let me upload. So I'm going to upload a jar file here. Upload, custom setting, and apply. Meanwhile it is deploying. Let me just show you what configuration we have defined. So configuration we define static we have defined TTL as 30 seconds. So basically it will ignore the default value of TTL. It will basically delete your key when the TTL is expired. So this kind of setting is basically we can do in object store v2 as well. So let me show you how. So let's wait for application deployment. My application is started, but I'm waiting for switching. Switching should be done from my old deployment to new deployment, because as you can see that the scheduler is not switched yet. It should be switched from old application to new application. So basically switching is done. So my scheduler is running in here, as you can see that. So guys, let me show you one more use case here. When your keys are basically your keys are deploying with the old application. So as you can see that we have stored key 1, key 2, key 3, key 4 in our old deployment application. Like this application, we have stored key 1, key 2, key 3. We did some configuration changes and we deploy a new application. As you can see that new server is going to be allocated. This is a new server. So data is not lost actually. I just want to show you that data is not lost. We have a still key 1, key 2, key 3, key 4. Okay. So this is, you can see that in basically in multiple deployment, new machine is allocated, and the advantage of basically the advantage of object store v2, when new machine is going to be created, then your data is not lost. Okay, so let me delete those keys in order to show you. So I'm going to just delete the keys here, key delete. You can delete from here. Delete, 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 and delete. Okay, let me check logs. Yeah, so basically key 4 is coming. Let me check another second. Yeah, so there is no data is coming. So let me store key 1, key 2, as you know that we are not following the rolling TTL, because we have defined uh, the value for TTL. It is not absent value, it is a value is present. And what value is present? 30-second is present. So I'm going to store a 4 key. Max entry is ignored in any cases when you define or not define the custom configuration. Okay, so I've stored the 4 key. So let me show you. So as you can see that key 1, key 2, key 3, key 4 is coming. So let's wait for the basically the expiration interval thread is run, and it will delete the key whose detail is expired. So you can see that the key 1, key 2 deleted. Okay, and when the expiration key 3 is also deleted. When the expiration thread running in every 5 seconds, it will delete the keys. Yeah, so all keys are deleted. So this is about the custom setting, how exactly the max entry play a role. So it is not playing a role at all because it is ignored. How entity detail is basically play a role. If it is not defined, if it is absent, then rolling and static detail is applied. If it is present, then it is applied based on that. Okay. Okay, so partition, as I already mentioned, that if you're using custom configuration, then the new partition is created inside your application. It is not a physical memory, it's logical memory. Logical, it's not physical. And when you're not defining any object store reference configuration, then it will store in the default partition. Okay, yes. So basically, as you can see that in CloudHub application, we basically cannot deploy, we cannot force our application to not use object store v2. Okay, when we basically we do that, it will fail. Basically we are getting like object store v2 not supported for the organization. So we cannot this options we must need to be clicked, then only it will allow for deployment. So let me show you. So I am not able to change when I just unclick on object store configuration. So let me basically deploy a new application and try to deploy a new application without applying this object store option. So let me just upload one file. Okay, and let me unclick it, and here I just want to show you that whether it is allowed for me to not use object store v2 service. In many cases, for example, if data is not important and you basically because of some rate limiting on object store v2 or some advantage which you don't need, or basically there are many reasons where you not required to use object store v2. So how we can use that? So I tried to change one application with unclick object store v2. It is not allowed for me. I also try to deploy new application with this unclick option. Basically this unclick option object store v2, it is also not allow me to deploy. So how we can do that? How we can deploy our application in CloudHub with not using object store v2 service? So we have option there. So what is the option? So let me show you. So when we basically click on persistence false, when we are going to click on persistence false, then it will use use of object store. Okay, and we cannot see the data in runtime manager. So let me show you. So I have one more application, basically persistence false. Okay, I have one application persistence false. So let me show you object store configuration for that. Okay, we can just click on persistence false as it is. We cannot, no need to change anything. Just need to simply click persistence false with the custom configuration. We cannot if there's no configuration, basically there is no configuration defined, no custom objects to define, then you are not able to define persistence false. So there's only one way to define persistence false. You have to create a custom configuration, and once you create a custom configuration, just click this option, persistence false. So let me just export this jar file. Okay, export and finish. Yes, it is done. So let me open refresh where it is. I think let me again export. Yes, as you can see that my application is deployed, persistence false. Uh, okay, let me deploy this application, deploy application. Okay, this is my application name, CloudHub. Choose basically upload a file. This is nothing but persistence false. Will run time for 0.3. I cannot deploy with unclick. I have to check this box anyway. Okay. But as we have enabled the option persistence false, so it will not use object store v2 service. So we will not able to see the data in object store here. Okay. So I am going to show you that. Okay. Yes, so my application is deployed. Let me store some keys, copy link address. All application logic are same only, but only the object store configuration is changed. 2, 3. So as you can see that I've stored key 1, key 2, key 3, and let me show you logs. So those key 1, key 2, key 3 is coming in the retrieve operation. As you can see that key 1, key 2, key 3 is coming. And if I go to the object store setting, so as you can see that I am not able to see the data of object store basically in the this particular section. And if I go to the log section, you are able to see that we have the key stored in here. Okay, so where the key stored? So it is not stored in the OSB2 because we have enabled a persistence false. So where it is stored? It is in MuleSoft object store. Or MuleSoft object store is nothing but the Mule runtime object store. It is utilized. It is basically storing a key in MuleSoft object store runtime, not OSB2. So MuleSoft object store and OSB2 is a different thing. Okay, it is not same thing. So and what will happen when I redeploy my application? So data is going to be lost. Okay, let me show you one thing. You should not confuse with that. So we have defined the TTL as 0. So what does it mean? There is no basically time boundary for basically key. For the key basically when our application is running, so our key is not going to be deleted. It will deleted only one case when we are going to restart our application, because we are not utilizing OSV2 functionalities. Because we have enabled a persistence false in the object store configuration. Okay, so let me restart my application. I've just restarted my application. Once it is restarted, I'm going to show you that whether data survive or not. My application is deployed, but let's wait for scheduler switching. As you can see that my old application is still running scheduler. So in old application, the keys are there. In old deployment, basically, this is old deployment, this is new deployment. In old deployment, still scheduler is running. So it having a data. I am just waiting for my when my scheduler is switching to the new server, and that new server don't have a data. The old server having data, we all know that. But when the switching done to the new server, and so the new server don't have a data. So let me just go to the logs of new server. So yeah, so this is my new server. Yeah, so let's wait for switching. When scheduler is going to be run in this server, so it will just run every 1 second, and it will just do the retrieve all on this server object store, MuleSoft object store, and it will not get a key because key will be lost after deployment, because we have enabled the persistence false here. Yes, switching done. As you can see that the scheduler, when scheduler running on this runtime, this new server, then we are getting a 0 key. Okay, so our data is lost. So when we made this option persistence false with the default configuration, and when we deploy our application in CloudHub, so it will not use OSV2 service. So that's why we are not able to see the data in basically this section. and when we restart our application, so new server is going to be allocated. Our data had in this server, but when we deploy, a new server is going to be allocated. So that's why, as you can see, that the new server don't have a data. So this is basically a persistence false. So the persistence option is select for the object store configuration as false. The app does not use object store v2. It will work as a MuleSoft object store and run based on the applied configuration. Okay, so in my basically next video, I'm going to show you how exactly we are going to use object store v2 REST APIs. There are two flavor of the APIs. One is stats. One is normally basically normal operation which we are going to do for object store v2 API. So we will meet soon in part 4. Bye.